Hi everyone, thanks for joining in. I'm excited to have Karina May joining me. Hi Karina.
Hi, Jackie. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. Can't see anyone, but hi.
And some of you might remember Karina joined us a little while ago as author for the day, so great to have you back chatting with me.
Thanks. I think that was April, but yeah, I mean, what is time, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, a little bit about Karina. Karina's a Sydney based former magazine journalist turned digital marketer, avid reader, and writer of lively love stories that span the globe. Her debut print rom com is Dark a l'Orange for Breakfast, was published in April 2023 with Pan Macmillan, and her next book, Never Ever Forever, publishes in December this year. And I have to say, I listened to Duck a l'Orange for breakfast on audio and absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars.
Oh, thank you. We love 5 stars. I think I can't really take credit because I mean I can obviously wrote the story, but the narrator, Royce Flanagan, did such an amazing job. Like
Mm,
I was able to listen back and divorce myself from I think the craft of the actual story and listen to it as an independent like I hadn't written it. Yeah, like the voices that she did for some characters like Suzette, I was like, that's exactly
yeah,
how I,
she did
yeah.
a great job. So I'm really interested to know, what was the idea you had first for Duck a l'Orange?
Yeah, well, I think I mean if you read the blurb, it sounds like it's a pretty serious story because it's
Mm,
based around Maxine Mayberry, the protagonist who has been diagnosed with a brain tumor
mm,
and has also just been well, she has just broken up with her long-term partner. And the brain surgery stuff is something that I actually went through myself in 2019 and
oh,
2020.
really? Oh,
Yeah, so it was a benign brain tumor.
mm,
And I was writing prior to that. Like yeah, worked in magazines, and I dabbled creatively with creative writing. But it wasn't until I went through that health, well, not even a scare, but like
mm,
that health journey that it really helped sharpen like my priorities and
mm.
made me realize that yeah, I wanted to do something different with my life. And
Mm,
what happens if this is it and I haven't done the thing? So I very much had a similar mindset that Max did when she was kind of being wheeled into surgery. And after that in ICU, just being scared that maybe my brain wasn't working the same way
mm,
and that
mm,
I would lose the thing that I liked before I got to even do it.
mm,
So there's a scene in the book where Max listens to an audiobook in ICU just to kind of check her brain function. And
mm,
that's something that I did. So the spark for Duck definitely came from the health element. But then I combined like a lot of other ideas and fun ideas into the story. So it's not like a heavy, sick lit book. I'd like to think it's fun and quite hopeful and positive because I'd read a lot, of books that were darker themed. And that's not what I wanted to create. It's not how I felt. I'm someone that I guess looks on the bright side of life, like when you can
yeah.
make the lemonade. And I laugh my way kind of through this chaotic time for myself. So I wanted to
Mm,
like put that into the book.
mm. Yeah, well, that's a great story behind your story, and really glad to be able to be talking to you about it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
you have
thanks.
come through that surgery. Mm,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, by the time I went for the second surgery, which initially, I didn't know I had to have, it was just because
mm,
they hadn't gotten all the cells. I had an idea for this book already. So that made me kind of feel like I could take some control back when I was going into that second surgery. I pretended I was just there for research in the same way
mm,
an author might,
mm,
go in the field. I was like, you know what? I'm actually just going to use this as an opportunity to capture all the scents and smells of the hospital and use it to my advantage. And that was
mm,
obviously a really helpful mindset. Like, I don't believe in toxic positivity. Like, it obviously was still a hard time, but it was something that kept me going. And then it's just been the icing on the cake, or more than that, to then
mm,
actually have a finished product that I can look at and say, like, oh my God, this came out of something that was like a pretty dark time.
Yeah, yeah. And to have such a great book for your first book, does that put pressure on you for following books?
Um, well, yeah, I mean, I have my next book coming out the end of this month. They call it December release, which I've gotten used to. So it publishes November 28 as the December release, Never Ever Forever. So I had a lot of that done prior to Duck, as I fondly call it, coming out. So for sure, it's definitely got the same kind of wanderlust element. So in Duck, we travel to Paris. A lot of it's centered around French food and France. And in Never Ever Forever, we travel from Mudgee, so wine country, to India.
Oh,
so I think travel will always be part of my stories. But it was actually really helpful because I was doing edits because the books were so close together. I guess I was getting live feedback on Duck and like what people liked about it. And I could try and make sure that Never Ever Forever kind of encapsulated that same wanderlust feeling. It's like I always say, it's like rose-colored glasses, but then also we've got like the spectacles that we need to actually, for astigmatism. So there's a bit of, I guess real life in there as well. I don't want to be too fantasy. So, but yes, I mean, it's always a bit nerve-wracking to see how your next book will be received, and I'm going to find out pretty shortly. So.
And is there anything that surprised you about publishing your first book?
Yeah, I mean, everyone says writing is just a small part of it. And I think it's like now I understand the business of writing. So, it's promo it's meeting beautiful people in the community that want to talk about your book, which was so lovely. But then realizing, that there's a lot of front-facing events and that you're not just going to be at your computer all day. But then also just being embraced by the community, readers and people in even the Global Girls group, meeting. I've met a lot of lovely members of the group at even in person at live events. Linda, I don't know if you're watching. Hey, so I guess how lovely readers are and other fellow writers, and just how warmly embraced you are into this community. The passion, I think it's unlike anything I've really experienced before. Why do you care about my story so much that I just came from my head? It's that's really surprised me in the best way.
And the writing community, the community of authors, seems to be very great from what I've experienced, very encouraging.
Supportive. And even when I was say aspiring or I was emerging, I felt like I was treated the same way as now that I'm published. There's no hierarchy, and everyone kind of shares knowledge and helps with what they can. I mean, Australian authors are up against it. Book Talk has been amazing for reading in general, but a lot of international titles have been boosted. So I think there's a real camaraderie in the Australian writers community where we just want to help each other because there's amazing stories being told. So now, now that, I've had a book out, I try and, pass on what I do know and help other debuts as well. There's a lot of amazing debuts that I'm sure we'll get on to recommending titles that I've read recently.
Yeah, well, do you want to tell us some that you recommend?
Sorry, I jumped ahead, but I also co-host a podcast with a fellow romance author, Claire Fletcher. I don't know if she's in the group. Yeah. So she wrote Five Bush Weddings, was her debut, and then her follow-up has been Love Match, which I think came out even last month. So we, as part of our podcast, we platform other Australian rom-com authors, which the beauty of that is that we get now lots of sneak peeks of advanced reading copies. So I'm learning about the perks of this job as well, which is really nice. So I've recently read a rom-com that's coming out in January with Alan and Unwin by an author called Natalie Murray, Love Just In. And they're marketing her as the Australian Emily Henry. So anyone that has been anywhere near rom-com knows Emily Henry. And so I read that a few weeks ago and absolutely loved it. It's based around, it's set in Newcastle. So I also always love stories where I recognise the scenery and the banter is top notch. And she does like sweet to sexy really well. If people like steamy novels, it's definitely really steamy, but not just the physical stuff without the emotional stuff. So that's going to be like such a great summer read. And another book that I read recently is a book called Someone Else's Bucket List, another romance. Obviously, it's always romance I normally recommend. And that's by an author called Amy Matthews. I think that comes out in January or February with Simon and Schuster. It's already been published in the States and it's been picked up here. Yeah, and that book has, I love my romance with a bit of depth. Like, obviously, I love humor. It's what I like to do. But this book starts with, it's a sister who has passed away of cancer, and it's her other sister that is completing her bucket list. But it's fun things like going to Katz's Deli in New York and having to like reenact that scene out of Harry Met Sally. But then some really intimate to their relationship, personal bucket list items as well. I just enjoyed that book so much. And it was one of those ones where I didn't want to race through it. I kind of savored a bucket list item each night. So that's when I know that I'm really engaging with the book, because you read so much and some things are forgettable, and it's like, I'm never going to forget that book. I just cried on the last page, and I'm not really a crier when I read. So I knew it got me good.
Yeah, I'll have to check that one out. That sounds like a great one.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, if you've read Emma Gray's The Last Love Note, I don't know if she's been in the group, but
I have read
and that's
that one.
coming out in the States. And it gave me the same feeling where there's the depth to it.
We've got quite a few people watching, so just wanted to say to the people watching, if you've got a question for Karina, please type it in comments and I can read it out. Jessie said she loved Duck à l'Orange for breakfast and was a delightful read.
Thank you for reading. It's still surreal to me that you think that when you get a publishing deal, you still just can't picture it being published in bookstores. You still just think, like, no one's going to see it.
And Belinda, who you mentioned before, she has a great question. She wonders, if your book was made into a movie, do you have any actors in mind for your characters?
I always have the worst answer to this question. And the main thing I get stuck on is who plays Johnny, because he's got to have Greek heritage. So I'm open to suggestions there. But when I was writing, I was picturing Joshua Jackson from Dawson's Creek. But he's probably a decade too old for that role. And also, from my knowledge, he doesn't have Greek heritage. And then I always think for Max, because I think she has this kind of fragile vulnerability, but also obviously a quick wit. So I always think of Megan Fahy. I think that's how you say it. She was in The Bold Type, but more recently she was on the latest season of White Lotus. So she seems all sweet, but she's definitely got like layers to her. But always open to suggestions for casting, and we can get Hollywood onto it ASAP.
And I'm wondering, with your new book, like Duck à l'Orange has obviously a lot of personal parts to it, of things that actually did happen in your life. What has your new book got anything like that?
Just really the travel element. So I will never write about a place unless I've been there. But that doesn't mean that I have to have lived there. Like Never Ever Forever travels to Mumbai, and like generally in India. And I've just visited there as a tourist. But because I write a lot of, I guess, protagonists at crossroads, and that they're kind of taking themselves out of their life and fish and water kind of trope, which is what you get a lot, I think, when you travel. I don't necessarily have to have hesitated there or been there for a long period of time, but at least visited, because I do armchair travel or like desk travel while I'm writing, where I'm just going back to that place. So yeah, that's really the only personal references in this newest book. I think I always kind of minor things like, little scenes and things that actually happened and kind of twist them a little bit. But Mudgee, I'd had, one of those great girls weekends there, and just like love Mudgee. I think anywhere that you're going for a girls' weekend to eat cheese and do wine tasting, that's a really easy place to revisit in a book. And India, I think I picked because Rosie Royce, who's the protagonist in Never Ever Forever, she's kind of like serial planner, scared of getting out of her comfort zone. And so putting her in the middle of India, which is, vibrant, but also very chaotic, is the perfect place, I think, for her to kind of, experience. And that's how I felt when I went there as well.
And Kim says she loves hearing about the supportive author community. It sounds really wonderful.
Oh, it is. It really is. Like, at first I thought these people can't be that nice, but they actually are. And Belinda can attest, like whenever we go, so Belinda lives on the Northern Beaches as well, near where I live. And there's always, I guess, author events, and the same kind of authors will come and support each other. And it's just what we do. We all show up for each other. It's really nice.
I feel very jealous of Belinda actually, because she's always posting these photos of meeting up, but like she's really close to it. And if I travel, it's quite a long way for me to travel.
Yeah, I feel that way when there's events at so Better Read Than Dead in Newtown in Sydney. They have a lot of events, which I love, but that one is like a bit harder to get to. I realize how lucky I am that I am like pretty central in Sydney. And but there are a lot of online things as well to stay engaged with community. I also listen to a lot of podcasts, and there's just lots of ways to like continue to be in it, which is really nice. And of course, like groups, like your group.
Yeah. And Jessie wonders what part of India you visited.
So I went to Delhi, Mumbai, and Goa. And I went to the Taj Mahal, which is in Agra, which is a few hours away from Delhi. It's always just, it feels like cheating because like I just get to spend my days when I'm writing, like revisiting those places in my head. I pull up photos and just kind of reminisce. And I never go to a place thinking I'm going to write about it. I don't think that it would work that way for me, because when I'm there, I don't want to be writing notes and thinking that way. Like I just want to actually experience it. And then when I'm writing, kind of those places come back to me. They naturally make their way into the story. So initially, it actually wasn't France. I initially had written it as Montreal in Canada. And that's because I had a good friend that was living in Toronto. So I had gone to visit her and been to Montreal for like a week. And so that was the place. And then it just didn't feel right in the story. I think maybe because the French themes are so big. Paris seems to be or France in general seemed to be the obvious choice. So that's why in Duck, Suzette, she's still Canadian, French Canadian, because I kind of just like picked her up from the story and put her in a new story, which kind of like, all the behind the scenes that writers say, just try and work out how to minimize the work that needs to be done.
And it must be great to be able to revisit your travel through your writing.
Oh, it is. And I just recently got back from a trip. Obviously, the last few years, it's been a lot harder to travel. So now, that travel is kind of back on. I went and got some fresh inspiration. So I just came back from a great trip I went to New York and London, and then the Cotswolds, which, they're just right for a romantic setting, and went to Surrey, which is actually where the town where The Holiday with Cameron Diaz and Jude Law is set. So expect a story coming out from there. And I always joke that means that it's tax deductible, right? Like if I'm visiting somewhere and putting it in my books, surely the tax man will have to be okay with that.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be. And like you said, you got a new book out very soon. Does that mean you've actually started writing another book at the moment?
Yeah, I've got 2 new ideas at the moment. So hopefully I'll have 2 more at least coming. And I'm now just deciding in which order to put them in. So I started one of them, and was quite far along. And then I've come back from this trip, and of course I'm super excited to get started. I do believe that you should write like where your light is as well. So at the moment, I guess I'm doing them simultaneously, but one is going to have to win out, I think. But yeah, I've got two fun ideas that incorporate travel again. I think that just making that my brand.
Yeah. And Liz wonders if you've got any advice for aspiring writers.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much. I think I always hear people say, just keep going, which is true. I had Rachel Johns, who, I don't know, she's like a women's fiction queen, very prolific, say to me once, if you try and quit and you can't, then you're a writer. So I've tried to quit a few times and just always found my way back dabbling. So I do understand that just keep going. But I think you can't just keep going if you don't have the right tools in place. And a huge part of that, I think, is to find your people, your accountability buddies, or just your community, which is like going to events. Or if you're wanting to learn more about the craft of writing, signing up to a course. I did the Australian Writers Centre, Write Your Novel, but Writing New South Wales has amazing courses. There's so many courses that are even, accessible and a good intro kind of thing to start with. And from there, even if you learn a couple of craft things, you meet so many great people, because it's hard to kind of explain. Well, I found it hard to explain to people in my life like what I was doing when they didn't maybe have those writing tendencies or weren't even big readers to, so you have to find people, I guess, that get your creative crazy or like what you want to be doing and think it's quite normal to be spending like a sunny Saturday getting words down. So that helped me like massively. And when, someone's not available, just having those podcasts, like I love the Australian Writers Centre podcast. There's so many amazing writing podcasts now. And just putting that in my ears for a bit of motivation, even for like 20 minutes, like while I'm stacking the dishwasher, it makes me want to sit down and write. And I think also like Duck L'Orange was my third book that I written, like the third manuscript. And so when you think that maybe, what you've done isn't going anywhere, just keep going. Like, just put it in the drawer and start the next thing. And you never know when that opportunity is going to come, and then you have that body of work or you have that experience. I could go on and on with advice, only because I'm very woo-woo now, because Duck got actually picked up in open submissions, which is just, submitting to an online form. Pam McMillan, which is my publisher, used to do Manuscript Mondays, which is I think was the first Monday of every month. Okay. They opened their website portal, and I just attached and sent. So I didn't know anyone, or, and I just kind of feel like if you've done the work and you're ready, that opportunity will find you when the time's right, which is so annoying to lots of people around me now, because I'm like, nope, it's going to happen. Like, it's hard not to believe when, like, that's what happened with me.
So did you try to get your other manuscripts published as well?
Yeah. So I actually had a digital book that came out with Harlequin HarperCollins, end of 2022. So that was like my first manuscript, so that got picked up. And so no, I mean, one of them is just remaining, I guess. I think most writers have what they call a training novel, where, you learn so much. It's funny even now approaching the books I'm working on now, just how quickly I can identify where there's a plot issue. I mean, I think everyone starts a new book thinking this is the one that won't have to have edits. Like, this is going to be fine. But I think that's what you tell yourself, just to like strap yourself in to do it again. There's obviously a lot of delightful things that come with I enjoy the writing. I enjoy sitting down and creating. But it's a lot of hard work as well. So you've got to be prepared to roll up your sleeves and actually do that kind of editing and structural work that's required too.
And so being an author, is that something you'd always had in the back of your mind, that that's something you wanted to do, or how did it all come about?
Not really. I mean, I used to identify as a gossip at school. Like people would say to me, "Oh, Karina, you with the gossip," and I'd kind of be like, "Well, is it gossip if I'm like it's about myself and I'm telling like a story?" And often it was like self-deprecating, and I would flourish. I would kind of exaggerate details because I could see my audience. So it took me a long time to work out that this whole time I've been a storyteller. I just didn't realize. And when I worked in magazines, I would always like add like a little creative paragraph to the beginning, and editors would be like, "Oh, that's not needed. Let's just." And I was always looking for story. But it wasn't until I changed careers from magazines just because of cuts and the rise of the internet, and moved into digital marketing. I was then writing like shorter copy. So I got home from work and I wasn't feeling spent. Like I felt like I had words left in me. I started to write little stories like Max in Duck. She writes vignettes about IKEA, but I mainly wrote them about funny things that had happened in my day or dating stories. So once I had a collection of those, I thought, oh, like maybe there's enough here for a book, and I might string them together and make a book. But the intention was never to be published. I think it was always, let me see if I can do this. And then I decided that I would sign up to the Australian Writer Centre, write your novel in 6 months course. And that's when I realised that to make a book, you don't just string some blog posts together. Like you have to kind of attack it in a different way. Or maybe that might work for some people, but not for me. And still then it was just about having the finished product. But I think something happens where, you start to move the goalposts when you see that and you're starting to hear about people getting published. So it wasn't until I actually did the course that I even considered publication. It was never my motivation. It was just about having something finished that I was proud of. But now I certainly have aspirations of being a career author. I'd love to be able to make a living and quit my day job and, actually do this full time forever, as long as I can. So once you get the bug, it is addictive.
Yeah. And Kim wonders if you have any of your own bucket list travel plans.
Well, I just completed them, so I'd been craving to go to New York. I think my books aren't published in the States yet. Who knows? But there's something about that city, right, where it's like dreams are made of. So from when my book, I guess, got picked up and I knew it was going to be published, I just had this sense of wanting to walk the streets in New York and be like, yeah, dreams come true. So I just did that. And I always wanted to go to the Cotswolds. So that was also a tick. I'd love to go to Lake Como and do some Italy. So, but yeah, there's some great Italian, a set of three Italian rom-coms coming out by Jenna De Blanco with Pam McMillan. I think the first one comes out next year, which I'm so excited for because she's actually Italian and she speaks Italian. So she'd probably do a way better job of that than I would be able to. So I might not touch Italy. But yeah, even Africa, I've never gone on safari. That's quite appealing to me. Yeah. Have you done safari or?
When I was 3 years old, I went on to Africa.
Still counts.
And we went on a little safari, but unfortunately, I can't really remember it.
Well, then you'll have to go back.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks so much for chatting with us. We had some great questions from people, and looking forward to reading your next book, and hope we get a chance to chat with you again.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Jackie, and for everyone that tuned in. That was really fun.
Yeah, no, it was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.